Scientists have uncovered a new blood type, and right now there's only one person in the world that has it. But in this case, it doesn't pay to be special. The woman has a mutated gene which changes how protein binds to red blood cells, meaning she is only compatible with herself if she ever needs any blood transfusions.
Right now, somewhere in the Caribbean, there's a woman whose body holds a secret that stumped doctors for 15 years. When she walks into any hospital on Earth, every blood bank becomes useless. Every donor registry becomes meaningless. Because her genetic code is so twisted that if she bleeds out, the only person who can save her is herself. Scientists just figured out why. And what they discovered didn't just create a new blood type, it opened a door to genetic mysteries we never knew existed.
Picture the moment when doctors realize their entire medical system has failed. That's what happened to a 54-year-old woman from Guadeloupe in 2011 when she needed routine surgery in Paris. The blood test that should have taken 5 minutes turned into an 8-hour nightmare that left an entire medical team questioning everything they knew about human biology. Lab technician after lab technician ran her blood against donor samples, watching the same horrifying result play out under their microscopes. Her blood plasma didn't just reject some donors. It launched a full-scale biological attack against every sample they tested. Thousands of potential donors from across Europe, including her own siblings, and her blood declared war on all of them.
The head of the blood bank was called in at 2 a.m. He thought the machines were broken. When 3 different machines produced identical results, he knew they were witnessing something that shouldn't exist. This woman's blood was rejecting every other human being on the planet, so violently that transfusing even a few drops would trigger fatal immune reactions. Dr. Sarah Fontaine, the surgeon who was supposed to operate, found herself facing an ethical nightmare. How do you perform surgery on someone who can't receive blood transfusions if something goes wrong? The woman was sitting in the pre-op room, completely unaware that she had just become the most medically vulnerable person alive. The surgery was postponed indefinitely. The medical team spent the next week testing every blood sample they could find, reaching out to blood banks in other countries, desperately hoping they had missed something. They hadn't. Out of 8 billion people on Earth, not one could donate blood to save her life.
What haunted the medical team most was the realization that this woman had been living normally for 54 years while carrying blood that made her a medical impossibility. Every day she drove to work, every vacation she took, every moment of her life, she was one accident away from a medical emergency that no hospital could handle. The case was quietly filed as an unexplained anomaly because the doctors didn't want to admit they had encountered something that shattered their understanding of human blood. For 8 years, she continued living normally while her medical file gathered dust, marked with a red flag that essentially warned any future doctor, if this patient needs blood, she will die. 8 years later, when geneticists finally decoded her DNA, they uncovered a family secret that had been hiding in plain sight for generations. Both of her parents, Marie and Claude, were carriers of the same rare genetic flaw. And when their genes combined in their daughter, they created something that had never been documented in medical history. Marie and Claude had lived completely normal lives on the tropical island of Guadeloupe, never knowing they each carried broken copies of a gene called PIGZ. When you inherit one broken copy, your blood works fine. But when you inherit 2 broken copies, like their daughter did, your blood becomes incompatible with every other person on Earth. Think of blood compatibility like a lock and key system. Most people have keys that fit into common locks. That's why blood transfusions work. But her genetic code was so corrupted that it couldn't build the right locks, meaning no one else's keys could ever fit. She was born with blood that was programmed to reject the entire human race. Guadeloupe's isolation had created the perfect storm for this genetic trap. On a small island where families have intermarried for centuries, rare genetic variations can spread through the community without anyone realizing. What started as a random mutation in one ancestor had quietly worked its way through family lines for generations.
waiting for the right combination to create someone with truly unique blood.
The geneticists traced her family tree back 4 generations and found multiple relatives who were likely carriers of this genetic flaw. Her grandmother probably carried it. Her aunt definitely carries it. There could be dozens of people in her extended family who have no idea they're carrying genetic code that could create children with blood that rejects all other humans. Dr. Thierry Peyrard, the researcher who led the genetic analysis, described the moment of discovery as realizing this wasn't a random accident. This was a genetic combination that had been building in this population for decades, maybe centuries. The scariest part is how this genetic trap spread silently through families. Marie and Claude had 3 children together. By pure genetic chance, only one inherited the deadly combination. Their other children are carriers who could pass this genetic time bomb to their own kids without ever knowing it exists. The same genetic flaw that makes her blood scientifically fascinating has turned her life into a series of medical tragedies that most people never have to face. Being unique isn't a superpower when your uniqueness comes with a price tag measured in lost children and damaged health. During her first pregnancy, at age 28, everything seemed normal until the delivery. She went into labor expecting to hold her baby, but complications during birth led to the infant's death. The doctors couldn't explain why. Her second pregnancy, 3 years later, ended the same way. A healthy pregnancy followed by a delivery that went catastrophically wrong, leaving her childless and heartbroken. Only now do scientists understand that these weren't random tragedies. The same broken PIGZ gene that makes her blood unique also disrupts how proteins function throughout her body. During pregnancy, when her immune system has to carefully balance protecting her while not attacking the developing baby, her corrupted proteins may have triggered reactions that made healthy delivery nearly impossible. Beyond the pregnancy losses, her genetic condition affects how her brain developed. She experiences mild cognitive challenges that make it difficult for her to fully understand complex concepts or hold demanding jobs. The broken gene that corrupts her blood proteins also corrupted the proteins her brain needed during development. At 68, she lives alone in a small apartment in Paris, supported by government assistance because her cognitive limitations make steady employment difficult. She has no children, no grandchildren, and a medical condition that isolates her from the rest of humanity in the most fundamental biological way possible. Her genetic uniqueness hasn't brought her fame or fortune. It's brought isolation and loss. When researchers explained her condition to her using simple language and visual aids, you can imagine how devastating it must have been to learn that her genetic difference had cost her so much. Dr. Peyrard spent considerable time helping her understand that she wasn't broken, just different. But the distinction was difficult for someone whose difference had brought such profound loss. Her medical records show a pattern of health complications that doctors never connected until they understood her genetic profile. Frequent infections, slow wound healing, and unusual reactions to medications, all likely connected to the same genetic flaw that makes her blood unique. She represents the hidden cost of genetic rarity that medical textbooks don't discuss. While scientists celebrate her as a breakthrough in understanding human diversity, she pays the price every day through health challenges, cognitive limitations, and the profound loneliness of being medically incompatible with the rest of the world. Every morning, Dr. Peyrard checks his phone, hoping for the message that could save her life. News that his team has found someone else with her blood type. For 3 years, they've been conducting the most intensive genetic manhunt in modern medicine, racing through Caribbean communities before time runs out. The search started on Guadeloupe, where they've tested over 3,000 residents in community centers, schools, and mobile blood drives. They're looking for the genetic needle in a haystack, someone who inherited the same deadly combination of genes from both parents. So far, they've found 47 people who carry one copy of the mutated gene, but none who carry 2. Maria Santos, a 34-year-old teacher from Guadeloupe, discovered during testing that she's a carrier of the genetic flaw. The researchers learned that her grandmother died during childbirth, and her aunt lost 3 babies. Maria had always thought her family was cursed, But now, she understands why. Her case suggests the genetic mutation has been circulating in Caribbean populations for generations, causing unexplained pregnancy complications and medical mysteries.
The team has expanded their search to neighboring islands, Martinique, Dominica, St. Lucia, anywhere Caribbean families might have migrated over the past 2 centuries. They've tested entire villages, tracked down distant relatives, and followed family trees through parish records dating back to the 1800s.
What they're finding is both promising and terrifying.
The genetic mutation appears in about 1 in 200 people in certain Caribbean communities, far higher than the global average. This suggests isolated island populations have created pockets where rare genetic combinations are much more likely to occur than anywhere else on Earth.
But finding carriers isn't enough. The woman needs someone who inherited 2 copies of the broken gene, just like she did. The math is brutal. Even in communities where the mutation is relatively common, the chance of finding someone with her exact genetic combination is still incredibly small.
Time is running out because she's 68 years old and her health is declining. If she suffers a major accident, develops cancer requiring chemotherapy, or needs emergency surgery, the lack of compatible blood donors could kill her. Every day without finding a genetic match brings her closer to a medical emergency that could be fatal.
The search has revealed dozens of families dealing with unexplained medical problems that might be connected to this genetic variation.
Children with developmental delays, women with repeated pregnancy losses, elderly relatives with mysterious health complications. All potentially linked to the same genetic flaw that makes one woman's blood unique.
In a sterile laboratory outside Paris, scientists are attempting something that sounds like science fiction: growing human blood from scratch, cell by cell, specifically engineered to be compatible with someone whose blood rejects all other humans. Dr. Luc Douay's team has become her genetic lifeline, working 12-hour days to create what nature couldn't provide.
The process starts with stem cells, blank biological templates that can become any type of cell in the human body. Using a cocktail of growth factors and nutrients, they coax these stem cells to develop into red blood cells over a period of 3 weeks. But the real breakthrough comes when they use gene editing technology to modify these laboratory-grown cells, essentially programming them to match her unique genetic signature. The team has successfully created small batches of compatible blood cells, but scaling up production to create enough blood for a medical emergency remains a massive challenge. Current production methods can create about 50 milliliters of compatible blood per month, barely enough for routine testing. Nowhere near the several units that might be needed during emergency surgery. Each batch of custom blood costs approximately 15,000 euros to produce, making it the most expensive blood in human history. Insurance companies have refused to cover the costs, arguing that experimental treatments for single patients aren't financially viable. The French government has stepped in to fund the research, but long-term financing remains uncertain.
The breakthrough moments come in small victories.
Last month, the team successfully transfused laboratory-grown blood into mice with genetic profiles similar to hers, with no adverse reactions. The mice remained healthy for weeks, proving that artificial blood could potentially work in living organisms.
But challenges remain enormous. Laboratory-grown blood has a shorter lifespan than natural blood,
meaning it needs to be used within days of production. The cells also don't carry all the complex proteins and factors that make natural blood fully functional, limiting their effectiveness in critical medical situations. The team has also been developing synthetic blood substitutes that could serve as temporary bridges during emergencies. These artificial products can carry oxygen and maintain blood pressure, but can't perform all the complex functions of real blood. Still, they might buy enough time during a medical crisis to save her life while custom blood is prepared. Her case has accelerated blood manufacturing research by decades. Techniques being developed specifically for her could eventually help anyone with rare blood types, creating a future where compatible blood is manufactured rather than donated. Her case has shattered a comfortable illusion that medical science understands human genetic diversity. Since 2022, scientists have identified 7 new blood group systems, more than were discovered in the previous 50 years combined. Each discovery reveals that people with medically challenging genetics have been living among us all along, their conditions hidden until chance encounters with modern medicine
expose their biological secrets.
The acceleration isn't coincidental. It's the result of genetic analysis finally becoming sophisticated enough to detect variations that have always existed. Dr. Martin Olsson from Sweden's Lund University estimates that thousands of people worldwide might have undiagnosed rare blood types, their conditions remaining hidden until medical emergencies force discovery. Consider the Duffy negative blood type, found almost exclusively in people of African descent, which provides natural resistance to certain types of malaria. For centuries, this genetic variation was invisible to medicine, known only through its protective effects against disease. How many other protective or challenging genetic variations remain undetected in human populations? Recent discoveries include the ER blood group, identified after a 50-year investigation that started with pregnancy complications in a British woman. The MAL blood group, found primarily in people from Papua New Guinea. The Kano blood group, discovered in a Japanese patient whose blood was incompatible with standard donors. Each case represents someone who lived with undiagnosed genetic uniqueness until medical necessity revealed their condition. The pattern suggests that genetic isolation in human populations, whether geographic, cultural, or historical, has created far more biological diversity than mainstream medicine has acknowledged. Island populations, mountain communities, historically isolated ethnic groups, and even large families with limited genetic mixing could be harboring rare variations that challenge standard medical treatment. Emma Richardson from rural Scotland discovered her rare blood type only when she needed emergency surgery after a car accident. Doctors later explained that she was fortunate to survive, not because of the accident, but because they almost administered blood that would have triggered fatal reactions. Her case led to the discovery of a genetic variation that affects about 1 in 5,000 people of Scottish Highland descent. Genetic databases now contain samples from over 100 million people worldwide. Yet new blood types continue to emerge regularly. This suggests that human genetic diversity is far more extensive than population genetics models predicted, with rare variations distributed through communities in patterns that scientists are only beginning to understand. The implications extend beyond blood types to encompass drug reactions, disease susceptibility, and treatment responses that vary based on genetic profiles most people don't know they carry. Personalized medicine isn't just a future possibility, it's a present necessity for people whose genetics don't fit standard medical categories. Her story isn't just about one woman's unique blood. It's evidence that human biological diversity is vast, largely unmapped, and hiding in plain sight throughout populations worldwide. As genetic analysis becomes routine in medical care, we're likely to discover that genetic uniqueness is far more common than anyone imagined.